to the next talk, which is predicting confirmation times of Bitcoin transactions, will be given by Rowel Gündlach. And I think you will, it will be a live talk, right? So you will just share your screen and then we move on.
Okay. Do you see everything?
Not yet, but there it is. So we
Okay,
see.
great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. In this presentation, I want to discuss with you joint work with Martijn Gijsbers and Jacques from the TUE University of Eindhoven, and David Koops, who was formerly a PhD student in the University of Amsterdam. So first, I want to emphasize that this purely focused on regular user that wants to send his or her transaction to someone else within the we broke notes with Nessus. And within that block. At this point, we say that the transaction is therefore also completed. This is also how we define times. That is the first time it's included within the block. And up until that point, our transaction is in the mempool. And the mempool can be seen as a sort of purgatory for unconfirmed transactions. And in this, how long such a transaction will be stuck within the mempool purgatory state. Let's go a little bit over the mempool unconfirmed transactions, where there is one specifically, the star one, in which we are interested. This is our transaction. But we, for simplicity, assume it. This mempool confirms. We see that there was only limited space in this block, and unfortunately, our transaction didn't match. That means that we have to wait for another block, which is a significant amount of time that we have to wait, and therefore cause a lot of delay on our transaction. But why weren't we chosen? Why did this and this transaction make it into the block and not ours? A big factor that comes into play there is the users decided to pay this amount of bits to. That's an interesting problem, because we could have put an infinite amount of fee on this transaction and then say, okay, then it would be confirmed within the next block. State, I would pay a high fee. When we have some constrictions on want to have it confirmed within a day with 95% or something like that, then we find an optimal fee that corresponds with it. And this fee that is on transactions is a bit serves the study. Know the fee. Then we can order pools, transaction here, transactions are there.
Just 1 second. A bit of a problem with your sound coming through. So I'm wondering whether if you switch off your camera, maybe then it becomes better. We can try whether it works better.
Yes, let's try that. Where is it? There used to be.
Presentation is all fine.
Sorry?
So presentation is not an issue. I thought if you stop your video and just
let's
but stop the video and then share your slides again, maybe then the bandwidth is there for your words.
All right.
For you.
Disappear, then please let me know. I'm sorry for that.
Much better.
Okay, great. Then this state we're going to assume that that miners pick their transactions that they want to include in their block purely based on fee density, meaning sorry, I'm a little bit sorry. This total ordering on the mempool based on fee density is very makes the mempool very structured, because once a new transaction arrives, we know exactly where it is going to be within this priority structure. And once a block arrives, we assume that the miner of the block is rational and will only take the highest transaction of the transactions of the highest fee density and propagate those through the system. And again, we see that our transaction was not high enough. It was in this state instead of in the red state as the other transactions. And with this structure on the mempool, we are proposing a model-based approach to predict how long now our transaction is going to take with this amount of fee. And a main interest is fast evaluation, because if we can predict, for example, the expected confirmation time, but it will take 5 minutes to confirm, then the practical use is questionable. And we want to stress again that we are mainly interested in our transactions. The other transactions are not very interesting. Just, I want to know. Much focus on the mempool and at the cumulative sum of transactions. If we then transactions arrive linearly over time, get such an increasing structure until a block is found of the are removed, and we jump down, go up and down, and then we get is purely transaction. It means that we can cut off the bottom half apart. For example, high density empty. I see the assumptions on how this we can on the first time this process hits the x-axis. Assume these assumptions, which I will discuss in it, and this will behave as a Kramer-Lumber. And therefore, density rate to apply to Bitcoin transaction confirmation times. And the assumptions that we need to know are that we know the start position y, which transaction into the mempool. The C denotes the number of transactions with higher priority that arrive over time, which we assume with slope c. We assume that the block sizes are fixed with size 1. This can be seen as 1 MB or 1 for we use block or with exponential inter-arrival times, also with a rate 1, which can be seen as 10 minutes or something like that. And so discussions are questionable. They are discussed in the literature, and we will come back on these assumptions later. But for assumptions hold, then the thing that I want to know is T, known from the literature. And this is the source in the book from Dixon. However, and if you want to evaluate, for example, the probability intervals, the expectation, it may take a while. And therefore, they are very nice expressions. They are very useful. But in our application, we are looking for something that can be evaluated even faster. And for this, we are considering an approximation method where we approximate the Cranmer-Bloomberg model, which is seen on the right. We know that it's close enough to 1, meaning that we are in a heavy traffic setting. The Bloomberg model can be approximated with a Brownian motion. And the main benefit of looking at the Brownian motion instead of the Brownian motion is a lot easier. It's a Gaussian distribution with these parameters. And everything that you need to know, the probability intervals, the expectation is calculated like this. It's very fast. However, we need to make one small significant remark. The Brownian motion and with respect to the Cranmer-Bloomberg are a little bit out of sync when we consider the hitting time exactly. Zooming in at this exact point, we see that the 0. It doesn't exactly hit. In practice, we see it will always be low. And this is the expected undershoot of the ES of y. Same but later this is also discussed. And not starting in y, but instead starting in y plus ES of y, lifting everything up. And at this point, it's calibrated to exact hitting point of the x-axis. This would then answer our question, because this distribution can be used to calculate the probability of waiting for longer than an amount of time. Only the ES of y still needs to be calculated, and it's in our paper, we suggest a relatively fast way of computing this ES of y, but it has to be done. See that it can be done rather intuitively with a first-step approach. Some level of y, we will hit 0 if we how much the expected undershoot is on the first time that the block is found. Intervalue, in which case the expectation is ES of next jump of y. It's before, then we find below the lower part of y. We see that determining the ES y is or this part above it. You can see we can until we eventually are at this state. I is below 1. This is 1. And if we go to 0 before 1, then we know the undershoot, y plus CT of minus 1. And we also show that the ES of 0 can be also relatively easy. It's not on the slides, but it's in the paper. And with the ES of 0, the up. So you can determine the ES of 0, of 1, and between 0 and 1, and for between 1 and 2, and etc. However, now again, we have to consider time versus accuracy, because evaluating this algorithmically can be quite hard, especially with integrals. Rather nice, c close to 1, which is that we were interested in, the heavy traffic regime. There we see if we plot ES of y as here it's ES of x. If we plot ES of x as a function of x, already after 2, it seems to be converging. And then it's just a matter of calculating ES infinity. And for ES infinity, we also show in the paper explicit expression for it, which is this. This is evaluated in no time, and here you need to find a positive solution to this equation, which can be some time, but is at least faster than that algorithm. And then it's just infinity for the C is 0.95 case. For say x is bigger than 2, or for x between 0 and 1.5 or 2, you need to run the algorithm. But that's only 2 or 1, 2 steps at most, which is then again a lot more doable. And now we've paid quite some time to ES of y, but in the next slide you'll see that it's really significant that we include this ES of y. On the yellow line, you'll see the confirmation time distribution from a Brownian motion that is not corrected, just the diffusion approximation. The green one is the corrected diffusion, where we do indeed add the ES of y. And the blue one is the simulated Cranbrook confirmation times. And they are so accurate that you can almost from them. But the green line is almost exactly on top of the blue one, which is the corrected versus the Cranbrook model. And the diffusion limit is deviates quite significantly from it. So it is really important that this ES of y is taken into account, and you want to use this prediction model. And that is then the main takeaway from this talk, that if you model the sample size as a Cranbrook model, and for C close to 1, it's very easy to find a confirmation time distribution. And that can be used into decision making. If I pay this amount of fee, because this y and this c are dependent on the amount of fee that you chose in the beginning, how long am I going to wait? And now I skimmed over a couple of important parts, but this is just a part of the work of a bigger work that we are currently is a part of a much bigger project that is mainly centered around the Cranbrook model, and how Bitcoin mempools can be seen as Cranbrook models. And in this talk, we make this connection, and we make the connection from the Cranbrook to the diffusion approximation. But there are much more things that one should consider. And this is the full project that we're currently working on. We also, of course, are interested in the exact confirmation time distribution, because this works for C close to 1. But if C is not close to 1, other methods need to be considered, and in future work, it's now nearing its completion. We are interested in the exact confirmation time distribution. Also, when we consider time not in a matter of seconds, but in a matter of number of blocks, because the current popular fee-sim or estimate smart fee methods give their advice in number of blocks. So it's perhaps more intuitive to say it takes 5 blocks than to say it takes 3 hours, let's say. But it's not evident how to go from one to the other. And we need a new step for this. And this is also discussed in future work. And then, of course, this line is, of course, a purely mathematical model. But how does it work in practice? That is also some open questions. We can look at this 2 ways. We can do an exact data analysis, where we compare the derived distribution versus observed confirmation time distributions. This is also future work. And this often in this session, I think in the second part, a colleague of mine, Ivo, is going to this robustness analysis. Because sometimes the assumptions that we make in the Cranbrook model, they just don't know the real world data just deviates structurally from it. But if we do not see a linear increase, but that shows a little bit of a bubble here and there, then does it really matter? Do we really see significant deviations from the Kramer-Nuremberg model to the Bitcoin mempool? Meaning that if there's a small deviation that we observe, then the Kramer-Nuremberg model can still be very useful here. And with this, this was my last slide. With this, I want to end. And I'm really interested if you have questions. I think I should stop.
Thank you for your presentation, and there are some questions. Daniel, do you want to start?
Hi. Yes. Yeah. Hi. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Very interesting. I was not familiar with the Kramer model, so I have some questions that might be very basic, but still. The first is whether the Kramer model is related to the busy period of an MG1 queue, and if that's the case, how do you compare your work with other people that actually consider the MG Infinity queue as opposed to MG1 to model the Bitcoin systems?
So there is a duality between the Kramer-Nuremberg model and the MG1 queues. You can just mirror them. As I said, the big difference is that here we increase linearly and then jump down, whereas in MG1 queues you increase if you decrease linearly and you jump up. And this duality is actually used when we consider the confirmation time expressed as number of blocks instead of number of seconds, because then the question is how many customers do arrive in this busy period, and that is also a study already, a problem that has been already studied in the literature, and there we can make the connection between Kramer-Nuremberg model to queuing systems to busy period analysis and use the current literature to its full potential and apply them in this different setting. So that was one part of your question, I think, and the other was on how it compares to other queuing models. Was it right?
Yes, actually, I also agree with you that intuitively a single server queue seems to capture best is a Bitcoin system. Actually, we had a paper in the previous edition of SOCCA where we also used the busy period of MG1 to capture the delays in these systems. But I see that some people in the literature consider the MG Infinity queue. So there is a paper now by Brian Frelick's 2020, where he talks about the infinite server queuing systems to model Bitcoin systems. So I was wondering if you are aware of these related works and if you understand why some people consider MG1 and others consider MG Infinity.
So I'm aware of the work of Kasahara and Kabahara, who look at also look at confirmation time and using MG1. And there you see they model where at some point I'm from a mempool as a discrete structure to a continuous, more continuous structure by looking at the weight instead of transactions by themselves. But if you keep looking at the transaction and a discrete structure, then you can very easily use, or no, not very easily, but it's very intuitive to use a queuing model with batch services. Yes, because once the first transaction in your queue is confirmed, then the whole block is filled. It means that the customers right behind it is confirmed as well. And this is I found this quite difficult. I think the paper itself is also quite difficult. The Kramer-Nuremberg model has of the analysis that we have done is relatively simplistic. MG1 and at which point we deviate from the MG1, but for the MG Infinity, to account for this priority structure. But I'm not sure. Maybe you can send this paper because it sounds really interesting. then I will have a look. And then,
Yes. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah. It was a very interesting presentation, and I'm really curious to learn more about the Kramer model and about your work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions. It was very interesting to have this discussion.
Are there any more questions? I'm wondering, actually, have you compared with empirical data? I mean, you're assuming a model, using a model, and then the question always is, at least for me, how good is this model, and does it really fit reality reasonably well?
Yeah, that's also something we are very interested in. And currently we are working on an extension of the work that I showed in the presentation. And it will, and a large part of it is devoted to a data analysis. And I think a colleague of mine will go this later today. But we extracting confirmation times from the Bitcoin system in a usable way is quite hard. And
yeah, that also links to English.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And this was also very interesting to see there that difference. And one of the main things that we struggle with is in the dependence structure between. Suppose we have the confirmation time of transaction X, or a transaction that has been sent at time t, and a transaction that has been sent at time t plus epsilon. And it's very likely that they have the same transaction confirmation time minus this epsilon if their fee is very close to each other, because it's likely that they are included in the same block. So this is one of the, let's say, the many complications we have faced over the last year. But we are now nearing the end of the data analysis, and the results look thus far quite promising.
Great.
I have a quick question. Did you see our SRDS paper? I think it was from 2017. It wasn't about prediction, but it was on observations. So we tracked the Ethereum blockchain for like about 100 days, and we also had some Bitcoin analysis, which was, I think, only 2 times 24 hours or something like that. But we did also find at the time, it was published in 2017. So the data was from early 2017, late 2016. I think 2 times 24 hours or 3 times on Bitcoin data. So you might have a look at that if you haven't already, and maybe compare a little bit with what's happening nowadays.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't. I've looked at a couple of sources, but I don't think I've seen this. I'll look into it. It sounds at least very interesting. And indeed, because of the period between end 2017 begin 2018, where Bitcoin behaved very say. Yeah, it's also interesting to see how if we can see something before, after, maybe if the model also in this strange time. Yeah, I can see the truth. Thank you very much.
Ingo,
no worries.
Ingo, do you also have data on confirmation times in that paper?
We do, yes. From memory, we definitely do for Ethereum, but I think we also did for Bitcoin. So that would be section 3, commit of Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah. So we are in particular interested in this fee, in this confirmation time, depending on the fee of the.
Yes.
So maybe then you have to use Ingo's tool and somehow find out how to extract it from the Ethereum blockchain. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's at the moment it's only Ethereum blockchain, the ELF tool, but indeed one of the extensions we plan to do with the students is extended to other blockchains. I don't know whether Bitcoin will be first priority or we look for Hyperledger first, but anyway, maybe it'll be useful if you start looking at Ethereum.
Yeah.
It also sounds as a nice